G'day guys, it's Calvin, car tune company in New Zealand. Another loom's arrived. Right, it's a VVti 1UZ. It's actually not too bad. It hasn't been mucked with, it hasn't been played with, it's just a standard loom. That big plug tells me it's a UCF20 1UZ VVti. So from like 80 from 97 JDM. US would be 98 to 2000 model. But this will be a JDM loom. The ECU will be immobilized, so we will get rid of that. I may have actually already done it, it may have been a pile that I was doing. And we will refab this loom. It's all pretty normal stuff. I've done zillions of them. I pretty much do it blindfolded. Got work to do. We'll just show you what we've got when we get to the end, unless I find something special in here. But it looks fairly normal. So we have the twin wiring system here. We have the old V6 loom. It's good. And we have the new VVti loom there with the replacement that's going in place of that, because that V6 is gone. And now 1UZ VVti is in the hole. What I've done is I've got some diagrams that I made up myself many years ago. And it's got the pinouts for both of those. I don't just trust that these are right. Okay. Turns out they were. Toyota has this habit of changing pins around. So I grabbed my multimeter, and yes, I continuity tested every single one of those wires. Okay. Which did actually mean that I found a few problems. Not that it really matters. Batch to the ECU had corroded off, so that V6 wasn't running well. And water temp sensor plug busted. And often I find that there's problems with these looms, of why the engine came out to be converted to another vehicle. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip out the four-wheel drive. Just going to get this out of the way. As you can see, I had a pair earlier. It was a nice pair. I hope you guys like a nice pair as well. So I'm going to grab this loom. There's an oxygen sensor that's going, but I want these plugs. Just a hint, guys. It costs me time to wash the wiring looms. I can't put that into another loom, can I? It's disgusting. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to give it a clean and blast it. But I'm not going to blast the whole loom in this case, because then I'm cleaning parts of the loom I don't need. I'm only going to clean the part of the loom that I need. I need a speed sensor, yes. I need a four-wheel drive engagement. These are the two little ones for the transfer case. And then I need, of course, a starter motor, air conditioning pump. Australians like their air conditioning. Right, an oil pressure and a water temp. Now the water temp will work fine on the Lexus one, or a Lexus one. The VVti's don't have a water temp sensor for the gauge, okay? And I see this a lot. Only the Crown 151 VVti have a water temp sensor for the gauge. On the VVti's, it's through the multiplex, which is like Toyota's CAN, which is a computer area network. It's like a communication cable line. So you need to put a sensor in. There's the hole in the block, or in the front crossover, it's all there. You tap it if you're putting something different in, like if you're running the factory ECU and the likes of the late Hiluxes, or the early ones, you just screw a suitable temp sensor into the port. Oil pressure. The Lexus has an oil pressure switch on all models. The Surf is going to have a gauge on the dash. So the pressure sender out of the V6 needs to be put into the Lexus engine, into the VVti, so the dash works correctly. Otherwise it'll have full oil pressure when it's got none, and no oil pressure on the gauge when it's got some. It works backwards. But put the right sensor in. Now the next bit I see that most guys forget is the front diff engagement. They have ADD, so here it is here. It drops down by the oil pressure in this particular case. There's the oil pressure, there's the ADD wires coming from over here. So what have I done? I've got some extra wires here over by the airflow meter. Got a single pin wire for the water temperature, so that's easy to find. Coming through here, here I am dropping in some front diff wires and an oil pressure wire. An air conditioning trigger wire. And over here is fan switch. Now part of the wires that go over here, let's see, over here, I've got some big ones and some small ones. On this one, my idea is that the man in Australia puts the fan switch wiring by the factory fuse box, or in the factory fuse box, or taps into the air conditioning wiring. And I think that would make things much better and neater and tidier. So the fan switch wiring will run into the cabin over here. There'll be a plug, but you can divert it back to out here. Same as the main relay. We need to modify the main relay circuit. V6 Surf. Main relay, turn the key on, the main relay turns on. Turn the key off, the main relay turns off. On the UZ, you turn the key on, the computer gets voltage. The computer turns the main relay on. When you turn the key off, the computer holds the main relay on for a few seconds. If it doesn't happen, you have problems. So therefore, we need to tap into the main relay circuit on the V6 Surf, which is in the factory fuse box. Hence I've got a wire run out there to enable that to be done really easily. Alright, next thing to do, I'm going to strip this dirty loom, get out the wires that I want for a bit of recycling for the gearbox stuff. I'm going to reuse the factory gearbox, but I've put new wires in for the front diff and those other accessories. I spend a lot of time stripping down standard looms, and it's really interesting to see what the manufacturers do and what they think is acceptable in a wiring loom. And of course these looms have been going for, this is like a 95 Surf, 25 years. Might be older. It might be nearly 30 years. Wires are too long, we just put a little loop in it. Yeah. These are the injector wires for one side. Injector triggers, and they're a little bit long. We have a joint, goes into a single wire, and it comes up, and it actually joins in. There's your two injector outputs from the ECU, number 10 and number 20, and they're actually joined together. So all the injectors are firing at once, but this side has these big long wires that go much longer than they really need to, and they just get folded up and taped in. Job done. As you can see, it's apart. We're just going to slip out the wiring for that gearbox stuff, for the four-wheel drive engagement down there, and reverse lights, and a speedo switch, and the speedo. It'll be actually too long, so I'll end up cutting it off and re-crimping it into the plugs that go into the body. And just like magic, this loom is now looking like an engine loom. This has all been apart, as you've seen. Suddenly there's a four-wheel drive part to it. So that's the gearbox side. Bit of a tidy up. Some Raychem, so that's RNF 100. I did reuse these plugs. They're actually in all right condition, considering. might be a little bit long. I was actually planning on coming out this side, so it may end up, you know, being zip tied in here like this. But too long is going to fit, too short is not going to fit. It's got the earths. It's got the earths that go on the back of the engine. All taped up nicely. I've got these 6 extra wires here, which we will discuss later on. There's now a water temp plug in the loom. Of course, this loom didn't have a water temp plug. Didn't have a water temp sensor. Now, I happen to have my next job, which is going to be a 1UZ VVti, but it's out of a crown. So you'll see the grommet through the firewall is different. You'll see the body plugs are different. It's multiple body plugs. ECU plugs are the same. If we go along here, not that side. It was around where I was. We look over here. They have a water temp sensor plug. So that single wire one is for the dash. The crown don't have multiplex or Toyota's CAN system, whereas the UCF20 Celsius LS400s do have multiplex. So the temp gauge is via that system. So they use the factory EFI temp sensor. The computer does some voodoo magic and sends a signal to the dash for the water temp. And it is a voodoo magic signal. It's like a encoded signal is probably the easiest way to explain it. Other things we've got in here, look at this. Oh, this is the 4-wheel drive for the front diff. Probably put that in now. On that one, I was going to recycle the plug, but I went to touch it in here and it goes crack, 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 crack. I was like, no, we won't do that. And this one, it's probably going to be a bit long. They actually got this little extension, but it's for the oil pressure gauge on the 4Runner or the Surf. I have put that connector, and you can convert that to connector with a bit of a cut, slice with a scalpel or a razor blade, and you can make it look like that one. Now on this one, it's really good working with another mechanic because I don't need to tell them that the oil pressure switch from the Lexus doesn't work, isn't compatible with the dash on the Surf or the 4Runner. And it's the same as the water temp gauge. They'll just know that there's not a water temp gauge and we've better put one in it and put the right one in it. It's really simple. And as I said, same with that oil pressure. They'll just know, because they are trained mechanics, about this stuff and know to put that in. So that's really helpful. I'm not going to go too deep into that. Of course, we've got the airflow meter in there. Oh, and an air conditioning wire. I've got an air conditioning wire, which... and again, they will know that they can't run the VVti, and they will know that whether or not the AC pump is compatible, because some of them can be used and some can't. Some have got like a pressure valve system on them that it's not worth using, and they'll understand the speed sensor circuit on the AC pump. So again, fortunately, working with mechanics who know this stuff, I'm not going to go too far into that because I'll just know how to make that work. My goal now is these wires and those two plugs. So those are going onto there to make it as plug-in as we can. You'll notice we've only got 2 plugs here. That's because all but one wire gets used out of this one, which is it's here. I'm telling you, it's here. It's a green wire. I was just looking at it too. There it is. That's the only wire that's going to go back into that plug. I find it easy. I just pop them all out. Do it by memory now. But this plug still gets used. It will end up looking like this with one of these little black boxes, which is because we've removed the transmission. Removing the transmission on a 1UZ VVti causes the VVti to turn off if it isn't done correctly with one of these little signal boxes. I could just put it in neutral and it'll have no VVti, so it'll lack power down low. Also, it won't have as much power up top because the ignition timing is retarded and the fuel maps are slightly different, funny enough. So that's where this little ATMU transmission simulator box comes in, okay? And so we pop that in. The ECU then receives the expected signals, and the VVti will operate, and you get that bottom end power, plus the timing maps are correct, so you get your top end power. They will run, as I said, they will run fine without it, but they run better with it and with all that stuff working, so we don't want to do half a job. Okay, I'm putting some plugs on, making it so it plugs in like to the Forerunner, and we'll have a catch up once I've hopefully done that and got that sorted and don't tear my hair out too much. This loom is as far as I can go at this point in time. So what have I done? Because this loom's all been refabbed, gone through that, new plugs, connectors, added some four-wheel drive stuff, and I'm now completed by the ECU. These two connectors have now become part of the engine loom. This one isn't used at all. Now there's something really important in here, and I'm going to say it a couple of times. I'm going to say it again because we're about to put it on the engine. There's some of these wires here that come all the way over here to this plug. The red wire. The red wire is for the drive-by-wire throttle. So it needs a permanent fuse to the battery. Okay, so fused to the battery, 10 amp fuse. And then these two. So on the bottom of the EFI relay in the fuse box, there is a power supply coming into it, an ignition power supply. Gets cut. That red blue gets the ignition side from the key, and this yellow blue, I think it's a blue, goes to the other side to trigger the relay. That is vitally important. These two here, these extras, can be used for the fan control. And there's a third extra, which probably isn't going to be used. It's just, it truly is an extra. So, red wire over there, fused, and then the red blue and the yellow blue wires have to be connected into the bottom of the main EFI relay in this vehicle. There's this extra plug. There's that red black, that's the true extra, just if we need to do anything. These top two, they're for the fan switch. We can use them to run the fan switch back over by the relay box, and I think that's the best place to put the fan control. There's the spare plug, so that can be explained in the instructions. There is the transmission emulator, because this is now a manual, and that will sort out that side of things, okay? Getting rid of the auto. I've got to put the OBD2 plug on. Turns out I didn't have one with me. Wiring grommet. Generally it sits just so this big lump here is just inside the firewall. And you see these factory plugs? They plug in like standard. They just plug in. Right. It's time to put this loom onto the engine. Get it tested, get it running, get it checked. I don't have an engine in my garage, so over to the workshop. It's not far away. We'll get this on and get it running. Back in the main workshop, we're going to fire this engine harness up. So to fit it, it pretty much just clips onto the engine. That's really simple. Oil pressure down there. Oil pressure down there can be adjusted to suit. And then that's the wiring for the front diff. Coming out here is some fan wiring. You can just pull that and it'll just get longer, longer. So So that is for the fan circuit if it's going through this loom. Otherwise, it can be wired directly to the fuse box on the vehicle. Running the correct airflow meter. Now, alternator wiring isn't included in this loom, and on the V6 it's going to change sides. Okay, so the V6 has the wiring loom, or it has the alternator on the left hand side, and we're now on the right hand. So you can just run a wire either underneath the vehicle or up to the fuse box and then around, does a loop. Nice and simple. You can see this plug here has got some wires attached. This one here is for the drive-by wire, and it's going to a fuse, 10 amp fuse, got permanent battery power. This one is clipped off the bottom of the main EFI relay, and the ignition side goes into the loop, and then this one here, the yellow blue, goes back to trigger the main EFI relay, and I've checked that that is working like it should. Here's the gearbox loom, and four-wheel drive engagement is right at the end, so that just all plugs in and gets clipped up appropriately. Oxygen sensors are plugged in, there and there. Starter cable. Now if we need a big starter cable, there's already one on the vehicle, but I can supply those as well, and a range of alternator cables if required. Of course, the extra water temp sensor is fitted down there. For oil pressure, it's the one off the V6 to make the oil pressure work. Plugged in the ECU. I plugged in the transmission emulator, and I've just powered it up because of course this is just going to plug into the vehicle. That's for cores and injectors. That's permanent battery power, and that one is for the ECU. All powered from the factory vehicle. I've also got my scan tool attached. So let's power it up, make it go. Ooh, it's making noises. This should be start right here. And of course the start's all done through the factory vehicle. Oh wait, it won't go, it needs fuel.
Yes.
And of course normally it's through the factory vehicle. Bucket of noise is now attached. So of course that would normally be an upgraded pump. So the V6 tank is already fuel injected, put an upgraded pump in it, put some earmuffs on. There has been a little bit of time since I fired this up. And yep, it started and it ran and it revved. But it just didn't sound quite right. So I've done some testing and done some checking. You'll see different ECUs. You'll see spare throttle bodies. So the throttle butterfly is only opening about that far. About 30%, and I found that by reading on my scan tool and checking, taking my time to go through it. As you can see, I'm reasonably calm. I see this quite a bit. These engines came apart in Japan for a reason. They get pulled apart out of cars, and there's often a reason. Sometimes it's just because they're old and they've reached their use by date and they get scrapped. But every now and again, there's issues. Wiring loom issues, ECU issues, mechanical issues. Tend to be wiring issues more than anything. So I've gone through the loom, even continuity testing it. You can have wires that are like, they're touching, but there's not enough to flow any amperage because there's only like one strand left. Continuity test fine. This is why I put them on an engine. So I've just made a little change in the loom. Let's see if I found the issue. Throttle was on. Woo! That's what we wanted to see. So a simple bad connection, but I fixed it, I found it. It only took me about 20 minutes. It was multiple throttle bodies. And it didn't help, I've got some throttle bodies that I did a throttle body video and I accidentally pulled apart the wrong one. So I've got some unknown throttle bodies. But I'm going to put them on this and check it as well. Check all those work so I can say yes, good or bad. I'm seeing quite a lot of the accelerator position sensors fail. So much so that I'm keeping them in stock now because I see them fail that much. Right, let's see if it makes some proper noise now and really revs its nana off. Come up on your ears. Start is that one. Fuel pump. Oh no! And that's how it should be. Bouncing off the rev limiter, quick as, sharp throttle response. That's so much better. Right, I'm happy now. This one's coming off the engine loom. Is there anything else we need to know? Let's just go over a quick brief for Murray. Put the loom on the engine, plug the transmission in, or the gearbox, four-wheel drive in, fit the temp sensor, fit the oil pressure switch out of sensor out of the other engine, out of the V6 engine. Air conditioning pump, work out which one you've got, and that will need sorting. This ECU can't control it, so you'll need a manual switch for the air conditioning. Make sure the oxygen sensors are in good order. Make sure it's got the correct airflow meter. Make sure your tank breather, V6, is normally on the body, so throw that away. Connect the one on the engine. That's pretty much it. Check your AVIS turns on when you start the engine. That's everything. That's everything. We're good. Talk to you later. I forgot to talk about the tacho. So the V6 tacho can be used with a couple of modifications. So I've got the jump wire in, I've got a plug, which is that fella, 4-pin, which has got a power and an earth. So if you want to put an adjusty box in, like range of different boxes, Dakota Digital, there's probably others in Australia, that's the one I use a lot. But it doesn't need that. That's a very easy way to do it, but it's more money that we don't need to spend. So you can just bypass the resistor in the back of the tacho, the dropping resistor, and then you can just calibrate it, plug in the OBD2 scan tool port, and adjust it to suit. Okay? And I think that's a really good way to do it. I've got another video. So somewhere I've got like VVti to Tacho to V6 petrol Tacho. And I just show that process. So that is how I would recommend, and that's how I would be doing it. Because it's simple, it's easy, and it works really well.